All right, it is Wednesday. I'm a couple, gosh, I was thinking about Wednesday. It is Monday, and we are here on Twitch. I'm just working on the cameras a little bit. We just got a camera back from IT, so I'm trying to get that up and going. Just checking a quick filter here so we can check and make sure that we've got everything up and going. And I was hoping to have this overhead on here for tonight's video stream. But it looks like I am not having the luck I was hoping for. So we may have to adjust the other camera, because I don't think you need two of me just sitting and talking. I'm going to have to contact IT on that. So let's rearrange a little bit. And good evening. I am Joe, and this is Green Oaks Gaming. Obviously, you are here on a Monday evening, and that means we are talking about the journey, exploring game worlds in our tabletop RPGs. Now, I did have a cool setup, I was hoping, over here with the map, but we're going to adjust a little bit, move some cameras around here so that we can look at some things a little differently. And I know the angle is not going to be fantastic, but we're going to have to make do. All right, so just as a quick bit of a recap, this is the map that we have been focusing on and getting ready to start a new campaign, which this one is a little funky because I'm starting this campaign at level 10. I'm planning to go up to level 16, just into 16, I should say. And so my game world, which is not the Forgotten Realms, where everybody plays. The game world is a homebrew game world, and primarily the majority of my games have been focused here in Espar. The current group that is getting ready to transition to the new game is up in this frontier area. The main focus of the Esperian kingdoms, the collection of kingdoms, is down here, so they have been in the frontier area. So as I was writing this, I was thinking about that was targeted for this adventure that was designed to take them up to level 10 and then end. As I started thinking, where am I going to place the next campaign, I contemplated keeping it in the same area, but I've been playing in this area for quite some time, a little bit in some other areas, but primarily in this area. So an area I have not explored since 3rd edition is all the way down here, and this is a cool area, or was a cool area when I was playing it in 3rd edition. This was actually a volcano that had exploded, and so it's really cool area. A lot of specific terrain, I will say. There is a spur with a kind of separated kingdom there, and then another continental plate, I guess you would say. It's kind of cut off. So this here is a pretty nice area for me to use for this campaign. So we have been going through and building out the campaign area. Because I haven't used this for so long, I am able to really dive in and look at what is the area that the players will experience. How can I best describe it? How can I make it feel very unique, very grounded, and also very, I guess the word I want to use is very fleshed out. Now, generally a lot of this prep that I do, I do in just a few sittings and I don't broadcast it, but I wanted to kind of utilize this time frame to do some of this prep work ahead of time. So I'm going to change the light a little bit to get a little more light on the paper. And last time we talked a lot about the religion that is in the area, and started talking about the starting area, the first area of adventure that the players are going to be exposed to, and then how that's going to branch off into different aspects of play. And for me, one of the biggest I guess pieces is I don't want them to use this as a base of operations. And the reason I don't want them to use this area as a base of operations is because I want the characters to feel like they are the outsiders. So this set area is not going to be their base of operations. However, I do want to flesh this out a little bit and ground it in the area. We talked a little bit with this being a military kind of installation and overall a very formidable location on cliffs. The area itself, I want to have them be able to explore and adventure in, but ultimately leave. So I'm just going to, real quick, I just do a couple of little doodles here so I can kind of, me, myself, and I visualize a little bit more what they are going to be up against, what they're going to be facing, and how is it going to look and feel from a gaming perspective, because that will help me describe the area and make sure that it connects to the elements of the military that we have already kind of established in the meeting. So I just go through and do a quick little doodle. This is not going to be fantastic art by any means. I am just looking at, again, just quick little doodles to center myself and know the area. So this has 3 floors up above ground, and each floor pretty much just connected towers. All right, so then I can start to, again, just drive a visual here that I can describe to my players, maybe even show them if the doodle turns out okay. I can show them this quick little doodle. You can see I start out with pencil. And then move into pens. After a bit. All right, now that I've got that kind of penciled in, I can go through and just, again, rough doodle in what the PCs will be seeing when they approach this location. Now, knowing that we've got, this is a military installation, there is going to be a curtain wall as well. There will also be, I want to put in a lot of the little elements. We'll have a couple of flags hanging down, and this will be the flag of the area, which is going to feature a griffin, a royal griffin, which I actually pulled an image of because I'm going to use it quite a bit. And again, just a quick little rough doodle to show my players what they can expect to see when entering this area. We've got 2 tower peaks. We've got some tile. We've got just a little bit of brickwork. But all of this here is going to be the primary tower that they'll do their first adventure in. And on the back side of this, well, and I can even put out a couple of notes. There are 2 banners with the green. Remember, the tapestry is going to be green, rich texture, but worn and slightly faded, and sporting a royal griffin embroidery. So we know there will be a curtain wall beyond that is also going to have a gatehouse. I'm just going to lightly pencil, or pen, I guess I am penning this in, just a quick little, almost see-through curtain wall, just so my players can get a lay of the land. And then this will curve around into the cliff sides. That makes up the back area. And then just a small little watchtower on the side. And just real quickly, just a quick little doodle of what they'll see when they approach the area. Now on the back, this is where I'm going to update my maps a little bit. And because these are just very, very old maps on graph paper, they've faded, they've stained. I haven't touched these maps in ages. So I just want to kind of doodle out the locations so I have it for my own sake. Guard room. We'll probably actually number this just like we would an old map. This is split in a couple of different areas just like that. And that's the main floor. And I'll probably touch up these maps so that I have them at the table, but I'm not going to do that here on the show. This is the first floor. And then the third floor is all connected with a secret door there. So I can quickly call out what items need to reflect back into the military, as well as into the populace at large. Now, two of the items I wanted to bring back into the next area, or possible areas, because I don't want a railroad. I don't want to say that they have to go through and go to the next area that I dictate. I'm going to give them options. So we talked about dropping clues to where they can go in and look at some of the political intrigue that's going on, as well as two different aspects of I hate to use the word, but I'm going to. Two aspects of evil that are taking over the land. One to the north, which is going to be plague, and one to the south, which is going to be pain and suffering. So I'm going to write down pain and suffering, which is going to be to the south, and then plague and disease to the north, and then political, which is going to be central. So aspects that I want to bring in, because the military is very, we talked about, they were given an item. The players are there to investigate and retrieve the item, and keep a very low profile. That's big key. All the politicians and the nobles and everybody wants everything to be very quiet and secretive, which is why they brought in adventurers. And so the adventurers are going to find three basic clues. I want to give them those breadcrumbs that they can find. And so I know already, because we've explored the history of the military is very traditional. They're also very good at keeping records, tracking items, and making sure that things are recorded very well. We'll have two aspects where items are found in record, and then we'll have one aspect where the clue is going to be found on an object, I suppose is the best way. So for the pain and suffering to the south, plague and disease to the north, and the political in the central arena, the pain and suffering is going to be all the records of the sarcophagus shows it was transported by and I'm going to put in parentheses here, cultist, because I haven't decided which cultist it's going to be yet. I haven't come up with that NPC. Who sent it from the southern temple of Marduk. Now remember, Marduk is the generally worshipped god of this area, and so the records will show that whoever this cultist is actually going to be a priest of Marduk. And it's not going to be they're not going to be listed as a cultist. It's not going to be that obvious. It's just going to be a clue saying that this item was sent by this person, and additional digging will have to come up of who this person is. So that should be more options for them to report back to the Capitol and do some digging. Start getting into who's who, what's going on, what's the overarching picture, how does this character play into this whole scene, why would they send this item here, that kind of deal. Now for the plague and disease, the sarcophagus itself is going to have panels that are not going to match exactly. They are going to look like they are one thing, but if they're removed or broken or damaged, which will probably have one or two of them damaged as it was being set down, maybe these ceramic plates broke and are cracked, and should be, if anybody's investigating, does a decent job of investigating the sarcophagus, see that in fact these symbols are not what they appear. They're hiding something further. So the sarcophagus is going to have panels that, when removed, shows traces of a temple dedicated to a different god. And this is a goddess who is not well known in the area. Now, depending on whether or not the characters have, let's say, good religion checks, they could determine who this god is, maybe even know a little bit about the religion itself. But this is going to be Talona, who is the god or goddess of plague and disease. Now, the goal is for them to have to piece together some clues. So the ceramics and everything are actually going to have come from a set area, because the NPC who is going with them will say the largest ceramic place. They don't do that at this temple in the south. All these ceramic panels come from the north. So they'll have an option to go south to talk to the cultist, who is a religious figure. They'll be able to go to the north to investigate the manufacturers of these ceramic plates. So they've already got two options for further adventure. And then the third one is that political aspect. Why was this brought here? I mean, who ordered it? And what was the end goal? So for that, there is going to be a record, a journal in the overseer's study that is talking about the orders that he received to receive this product and study it, make records of it, and determine if it can be an artifact that the military can use. So it's going to have this intriguing piece where somebody has determined that this location should open up and investigate this evil artifact, even though their claim is that it is not an evil artifact, it is just an artifact. So the political will be a journal entry for the military to evaluate and assess an artifact to determine if it can be used for the military. And this is a good aspect to start bringing in some of that political intrigue, because not only are you kind of pitting the military aspect up against the religious aspect, but also the nobles. Who's really pulling the strings? Is it the nobles following the dictates of the religion? Is it the nobles following the dictates of the military? Or is it the nobles manipulating the strings on the religious and military aspects against each other, pitting them against each other? So we've got our three kind of breadcrumbs. Now, how do we package those up and bring them into, one, the area, and expand on what is going to make them fit? So we already said for the pain and suffering, we're going to have the records showing that it came from we just put in parentheses, a cultist, and that it was sent from a temple of Marduk from the south. So we already have a few aspects of what that religious kind of incantation looks like. We know that they often wear the same type of clothing, but they wear specific hats that are almost like crowned up, very similar to what Marduk does. But how can we determine that, yes, this actually came from the temple of Marduk? So some things we need to think about is, for that record, if it's a scroll, it should have a seal with a visage of Marduk, which is a many-eyed, many-eared, face-breathing fire, something along those lines. While that's hard to do in a seal that's only going to be maybe 2 inches across, it can be done. It definitely can be done. So we want to just say that the seal is a visage of Marduk in red, which is a very, proper color for these religious practices. There also will be on there a name of the vicar, who is the cultist, and the name of the vicar, I'm not going to determine that yet because I want to wait until I start building that location. But that is going to be someone who is at the temple, who is obviously going to be a cultist for a god or goddess, if you will, of pain and suffering. So they'll be living kind of a double life. Ultimately, I want that to lead them to go to the temple and start questioning. So we'll have to start thinking about the temple itself. We've already worked quite a bit on how the religious people dress. They have almost like a top hat with a crown. It's rougher materials and furs. However, they're going to be in brighter colors. They've got jewels integrated into all of the religious iconography that's woven into and embroidered into their clothes. And we do know that it's an ancient religion, and it is widespread. So for that aspect, we know that their temple should be something that's old. They're going to be worshiping in kind of that old aspect. They want things to be very rooted in ancient locations. So let's put ancient and sacred to the religion. So we know with Marduk, ancient, tempest, what's something in the southern area that we can put, a good temple. Going through some of my notes earlier today, I was looking at things like amphitheaters, and it kept coming back to me that an ancient amphitheater would be a really cool aspect to have be the location of the next adventure, because I'm thinking down below the amphitheater, having different chambers and everything, and that's where the adventure itself will take place. So I keep going back to this amphitheater that is decorated up like this Mesopotamian temple. A lot of those were more exposed with the very sacred center chapel, if you will. I don't sanctuary being the most closed off, but a lot of the courtyards and everything very open. So I really like the idea of amphitheater that's very old, on the coast, exposed, but then draped with religious decoration and finery. Now, because the religion itself is very focused on tradition and everything, I also want to tie in, hopefully when the players get there, some type of festival, either preparing to going on, or having just completed. So I want to make sure that I have proper celebration. And because it's all about Tempest, I keep coming back to turning of tides, seasonal changes, something that is, switching for the Tempest domain, and seasonal changes seem to be a good one. The challenge of that is, if you have any of the spring or summer or fall equinoxes, those are very specific days. So trying to run games through and manage your days can be a little challenging. That's why you've got to be a lot more broad in what happens during, what happens before, and what happens after. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time working on that, but I know I want to have some type of an equinox. And we haven't really defined the timeline that this campaign is going to take place. We know it's going to be about 6 adventuring days, but those adventuring days could be spread out with a number of days in between. So it could take a year for this whole thing, for this whole campaign, counting downtime to go. I just don't know. That's a pace the players are going to help me establish. So it's hard to say. And I need to just real quick pop on here, just because I didn't have my comments open so I could see. All right. So we know that we've got to have a proper celebration, and I'm heading towards the equinox, and then the underground chambers will be the adventure point. And this is where the secret layer of Lovitar will be found. Now, at this location, this is where the party will have to really dive in and kind of see what the big picture is. Again, I am hoping that they don't choose this one first. I'm really going to try to steer them in another direction, but I have to be prepared because I don't want to sandbox them. I have to be very prepared that they could go this route instead. And so just doing some of this early work is going to be important, so that if they decide to do it, I at least have some standard idea of what the area is, what's going on, and how to best describe the location, the area, the people who are there. So having this little bit down is going to help. Where I really hope they go is to the area with the plague and disease. And this again is going to be led from the sarcophagus. That's the actual physical, the hard printed evidence that this sarcophagus is from the north. I want them to go north. That's what I'm hoping for, because when they go to the north, they're going to see the aspects of the plague god having torn through the area. So I want to have the fields, and again, we're going to start in spring, so I'm hoping it's starting that way. But the fields have been plowed and sowed, but not managed. So as they're traveling through, lots of weeds growing up in all the fields. It's looking a little bit overrun. There are creeping vines and just tons of weeds starting to choke out some of the crop areas. The orchards that they're going to be moving through for, we said there's already going to be coffee, there's going to be oils, there are going to be some fruits. All of those are going to be poorly managed, and I want that to really feel. There are very few people who are out and about. Those that are run away because they're sick, they're dying, they're suffering from this plague and disease. Any of them that are not are going to be begging for relief. So I want to call out that the people who we already know are going to be dressed in kind of rough hewn fabrics and cloths, but well made, very utilitarian. But the people are sick, needing relief, needing and begging for relief. And the area itself feels overrun with what are some good versions of plagues and diseases, insects, toads, frogs, etc. Let's say all of the animals are sickly, dying, flies. So I'm trying to think up the nastiest situation that I can put my players in. I want them to get in there and start realizing, hey man, there is something going on here. Quickly, I want, when they get to this area, I want the people to say that ever since this thing came or was exposed, this plague started descending on the area, and it has been spreading like wildfire. So I want two aspects in this area. The first one is the avatar of Baal, and the second one is the temple of Talona. So I want them to have two adventures in this northern location. And with the avatar of Baal, I'm actually hoping they take that one on first. That's the most pressing thing. So what I want them to do is to go to the town that deals with ceramics, chiefly, which is easy to do because we're on this volcanic slope, right? All of this mountainous area. I want to have one area that's really known for working ceramics. So I do want to steer them a lot. And as they get in there, what I'm hoping for is that they find that this sarcophagus was pulled from this set location. I want them to interact with these sick people who are sick and dying, and that should go kind of hand in hand with them trying to figure out what's going on. Ultimately, what I want them to do is to go to the location where this sarcophagus was found and dive into it, and that's the adventure. That is where they're going to take on the first avatar of Bahal. So that is going to be from an ancient temple, long rumored to be a place of evil. Recently opened and pilfered. Now the Temple of Talona, which is the second area, if they decide to kind of go through that route, I don't want to hide it from them by any way, shape, or form, but the Temple of Talona is going to be in a similar area. It's still going to be to the north, but not exactly where the Temple of Bahal is, the first Temple of Bahal that they'll come across. But there will be a Temple of Talona, who is the goddess of plague and disease, and should be taken on similar to the Temple of Lovatar. So both of these aspects need to be addressed, Lovatar as well as Talona, because they are servants of Bahal. So for the Temple of Talona, this is one where I want a very different aspect. I want this to also be started out as something other than a temple. I want it to be hidden and secretive and not well thought of. With the Temple of Lovatar, we put that underneath a Temple of Marduk. I want to avoid that religion versus religion piece on this one here. So rather than, for the Temple of Talona, rather than have it be a temple, even if it's a disguised temple, I want to have it be something that's completely different, but still reeks of this location. We know in this northern area, the slopes are a little more gentle. We know there's lots of agriculture. We know there's lots of farming and animal raising. Think of the Grecian countryside, right? So this is something that there is going to be a large populace that's currently suffering plague and disease. So I'm thinking, what is something with, that kind of Mesopotamian, Babylonian, Greek. I mean, definitely gods were super important. But another thing that was very, very important was water. And what better way to spread disease than to have control of the water? Water is an important aspect for agriculture, for the people who are out in rural areas. So this is going to be in an aqueduct, a transfer station, we'll call it. The Temple of Talona, they have built in an aspect of the aqueduct system, which is diverting water from the higher up regions in the mountains down into these valley areas where there's a lot more agriculture. And so everything is going to be focused around water. And that's a great aspect to bring in disease and spread it out quickly, rapidly, and in many cases, almost overnight. So the aqueduct system is going to be super important. And with this aspect of the farming community, we know that it's going to be very utilitarian. It is going to be very rural, so there won't be support, there won't be backup places. So as the adventurers get to the location and start putting parts and pieces together, again, I want them to go towards the Temple of Baal first, confront that avatar, but then I do want them to come across the Temple of Talona. And to do that, I'm going to start dropping hints. It's in the water. Right? So everybody will start talking about when this ancient evil temple was opened and pilfered. That's when things started. But everything that they say should lead back to the water. The water, the water, the water. So maybe we'll have a couple of people who boil the water and are fine. So I'm thinking distillers. Great way to bring in an inn, a tavern, something like that, because they should want to post up for a night after they battled that avatar of Baal. So we can have the bartender say, hey, this, you're good to drink. Anything else I wouldn't recommend because of all the plague and disease. And it should start putting together the pieces that, hey, there's something going on with the water. So let's see, where are we at on time? We got about 10 minutes left. So far from our initial launching point, we've come up with 3 different areas that we can start pointing the adventure to. We've got a good generalization of what they're going to see and the type of NPCs that we're going to describe and they're going to interact with. We know the locations. We know, because we've already worked so much with the land, we know the areas that they're going to be working on. We know that the consistency of the focus for these aspects, where we're moving from the military aspect into the religious aspect, are going to be big key factors. Now we're also going to tie those in politically, because the 2 areas, the Temple of Lovatar as well as the Temple of Talona, will have powerful political contact. And I'm going to put that by both of them. Now the Temple of Baal is not. Ultimately, the way I want them to proceed is to do the starting adventure, which is the military outpost. Then I would like them to go and face a avatar of Baal, and then do either the Temple of Talona or the Temple of Lovatar, then a second avatar of Baal, and then the other, either Talona or Lovatar, whoever they didn't, and then they'll have to take on the third avatar of Baal. And that's kind of the climax there, is with that third avatar. So we know we've got one more avatar that we want to put them against. And that's where that political aspect comes in. When they confront either at the Temple of Talona or the Temple of Lovatar, the impact that that powerful political contact, that should be shocking enough to drive them back to the starting point to start asking questions and getting into that political aspect of it if they haven't before. Because remember, we left that as an option for them early on. They could start going down that road. But for the second avatar, that is going to be haunting the Council of Nobles, pulling the strings, and setting up. Oop, busted my Cancel. The events at the temples of Lovitar and Talona. Now, whenever they take this one on, we know they're going to be in the courts, in the city. So we know, depending on where they're at in the city, right? We know if they're going through the city itself, it should be fairly standard and average people. The kind of higher in society they go, it should be more finely dressed, a little bit more elaborately garbed individuals. And then when they get into the upper echelons, we know that's where they are encrusting all of their vests and their epaulets with jewels and gems, really determining and showing and bragging almost their stations. So we've already got that set with the nobles dress code as well as the everyday people. A lot of this is going to be determined on the aspects that they take, how they're investigating, who they're pushing, who they're questioning, all of that. But for the avatar itself, the council chambers will have a path right to the second, we'll just say second, I'm going to put secretive chapel of Bahal. So ultimately, the third conflict as the climax is the most important, and we haven't even touched that one yet. I want to avoid that because as we look at the avatars of Bahal, I want to redefine those just a little bit. We know there's going to be one at this amphitheater, this coastal place. It's going to be kind of hidden under the foot of Marduk. We know the second one is going to be in the city. It's going to be hidden under the council chambers. I want to flesh that out a little bit more the next week as we talk about the court, because remember, that's still kind of our starting area. They will be brought in and addressed by courtiers. They won't be actually be going to the court, but they will have reason to after finding out the political impacts at the other two temples. So I want to focus on that second avatar, and then that'll lead us into the third avatar, which is going to take place on a different plane. So we have to start thinking about how we're going to have that planar opening tie into each of these, because I'm not going to dictate the order that these have to be ran through. I want the players to be able to determine the aspects that they want to chase, how they want to go about getting them, or even avoiding them. But now think about if they don't go to that, to the water treatment facility, I'm calling it, the aqueduct convergence point, and they don't worry about that at all, and they just go back to the city, well then Talona, that area is already going to continue to receive plague and disease, and Talona will be stronger and stronger and stronger. What does it mean if they don't address that threat at all and go after the second avatar of Bahal and forget Talona completely? We need to start thinking about those aspects. What happens if they don't go down and do this adventure that we do? We have to start thinking about how to plug those in the background, and I want to do that at the climax. I don't want to put the hands out too much, too early, too soon. I want there to be impacts back on the climax. So by getting our general roadmap, looking at the aspects that we want to explain, the areas that we want to talk about, the places we want to explore, just getting generalized ideas down is a great starting point. We'll continue to flesh these out a little bit, but next week we're going to talk about the more focused and a little bit deeper dive into the second avatar of Bahal in the city, in the below the council chambers and how we're going to get our player characters to understand the impacts and how that will eventually lead them, not right away, how that will eventually lead them on the climax to a different plane. And we'll be doing that all just from this area in the map. So definitely an exciting aspect. I'm looking forward to tying that one up and getting some more notes down so we can get this all figured out and wrapped up, and then starting to get it laid out in a good order with good descriptions. I'll show you how I prep them up for when I take them to the table. We'll start getting some of the NPCs as well as the villains put down so that we have them for quick reference when we're in game and actually going through the session and playing around the table. We're getting so close to getting this just the backbone having some ribs to it now. So the story is already done. That's the backbone. Now we're just putting ribs on. We're getting ready for the players to put the flesh on the story, and we're going to have a great opportunity for them to do that really well because of the foundations we're putting in these bones. So I hope it was enjoyable for you. I again apologize about the camera. I'll get IT on that right away so that we can have this set up so we can have the overhead on the next session should we need. I think it would have been a little bit easier. I was going to do more doodling and kind of flesh out some of those aspects that we talked about with the different military and religious and political figures, just so we had good points of reference. If I don't have the overhead camera, though, I don't want to do that on screen, just sideways. So if I work on any of that between now and then, we'll show it on camera next time. So thank you for joining me. Remember to check our schedule to see when we're going live. Again, I'm Joe with Green Oaks Gaming, and Wednesday we are going to be building a troll for the GMs. This is based off of a really cool miniature. I want to build up a monster that's kind of cool and unique and different. So if you're into looking at customizing and homebrewing some characters, whether you're a GM or player, especially this week for GM, make sure to check out our Wednesday show starting at 6:30 Central Standard Time. We'll see you then.